Seems fair to me.
Yes, he did.
Well, if you don't know what fair is, you can't make it.
Donnybrook is made possible by the members of the 9 Network.
And we sure appreciate that, and we thank you for joining us for this edition of Donnybrook. Also appreciate the support of our friends at the Gatesworth who are with us week in and week out. Let's meet our panelists surrounding the big table for this edition, starting with the media veteran herself who's returning after a couple of week absence, Wendy Wiese, and Bill McClellan from the St. Louis Post-Dispatch, Ray Hartmann from St. Louis Magazine, and Alvin Reid from STLMag.com, the St. Louis American, and more. And Wendy, we're going to start with you. Welcome back. We missed you so much.
I missed you guys.
Well, this week there was national news, I think originally from Politico, which reported that Michael Avenatti, who of course is the now famous or maybe infamous attorney for Stormy Daniels, has said that he may run for president of the United States. And if he does so, his political headquarters will be based in his hometown of St. Louis, Missouri. I believe he went to Parkway Central. Did he not? The same high school as you, Ray Hartmann?
I believe so.
Yeah, he
And
did.
I think
So
he's,
you might be the running mate.
Is he in the Hall of Fame too?
I think it's great.
You're in the Hall of Fame.
Oh, stop. I think he if he is, he should be.
He might be soon.
I mean, he represents a great American.
So-
but I believe the question was to you.
I think so. Do you think it's a good thing for St. Louis, Wendy?
I was just, I was kind of chuckling as I read the story because I thought that's just what we need. You know, right now as our stock is soaring so high in St. Louis, that we're going to be the world presidential headquarters, campaign headquarters. Obviously, he is he's a hometown guy. He's made good. He has certainly become the beloved of the cable news network and that kind of thing. And I know his parents are here, and obviously they're very proud of him. But I think I think maybe he needs to work a little bit on the humility because that while the current occupant of the White House isn't big on humility, he at least had a national brand name for about 45 years. Nobody really knows who this guy is.
I think it is fair to say that
presidential campaign.
I think it is fair to say that he's not going to be our next president.
Right.
Although
That's what you said about Trump.
after the last one,
That's what you said about Trump.
I mean, after having this deranged person make it, I guess you could not rule anybody out. But having said that, I think he has done himself. He is extremely entertaining and charismatic and smart. And so I think as a St. Louisan, I mean, not that it's where the headquarters is really matters. I think it's great. I think it's
good for St. Louis. If you remember, when we were trying to get the Rams, and Senator Tom Eagleton described this as a raucous Des Moines.
Yeah.
Well, this kind of makes it seem like what happens in St. Louis stays in St. Louis. I like the new image, kind of the naughty city.
Right.
Well, that's what I was going to say. I concur with both of you. Wait, we need them big and we need them bold. I don't care if they're liberal, conservative, whatever. We need 3-ring circuses to come to St. Louis. Just like we need, people were complaining about the too many 5Ks and this was a problem. No, come on, the nude bicycle race and everybody was, I saw it. No, we need it all. Bring it to St. Louis.
But you want poker machines in kindergarten classrooms.
That's fine with me.
No, I think you said third graders, right?
Right. If there's going to be Jurassic Park and dinosaurs literally chasing people down the street, I just assume be St. Louis than San Diego.
I got to tell you, you guys are missing out because St. Louis, as you know, is a big ag tech capital, and it doesn't need Michael Avenatti and his political headquarters.
No, you're wrong about that.
No.
We need that and everything else.
We can
grow all the
Michael
crops.
Avenatti, maybe if he has a presidential library and it's based here, that'd be one thing. But how the heck would the headquarters of a political campaign in any way
because it's a
hand
show.
St. Louis?
It's a show.
Right.
CNN will follow him everywhere he goes. Fox would follow him.
No one
everywhere
goes
he
to headquarters.
Oh, no.
Who was
All
Joe?
of his-
But Joe the plumber, remember him? He also had a show, and I don't think anybody at this table could tell you where he's from.
Well, let's be
Someplace
clear. I
in
don't
Ohio.
think this is a big economic development event.
Good,
right?
'cause it won't be.
Well, nobody's saying
Nobody's
this.
saying
It's just
that.
fun. It's just a fun story.
You think it's fun? The stripper who brings down the president. You think that's fun?
No, but
Well,
if there was,
I know
wait
you
a minute,
think- well,
wait a
he
minute, hold it.
apparently did.
Now, one of the housewives is married to a guy from St. Louis, Jim Edmonds. But if there was a Housewives of St. Louis, y'all be riveted in on it because
Well,
we
now
know
that's
the
interesting.
players.
Which
and
is,
they'd be right
that's a
here.
better question.
Let me
Why
correct-
does
wait a
Andy
minute.
Cohen, by the way, whose lovely parents watch Donnybrook, why does he not have the Housewives of St. Louis,
Because
Missouri?
Wendy turned the contract down.
Let me correct Wendy.
Right.
So let's correct the record. She's not a stripper. She's a porn star, which is different.
I'm
And the
sorry.
fact that the president of the United States
He's not
paid
talking
off
about
a
me.
porn
He's talking about
star
Stormy
it
Daniels.
was in most of the previous 44 presidencies.
All right.
Would not be
Regardless
taken
of
for
all
granted.
that, it would be good for St.
Amen.
Louis to
Yes, it
have.
would.
Yes.
It'd be
Well,
good.
anyway.
fun.
All right.
So you're
we're
saying
going to move on.
beggars
We're going to
can't
move
be
on. Okay, I think that's
Yes.
enough of that topic. I think Wendy won the debate. And that's a question for Evelyn and Luke Cohen. Ask Andy next time why we don't have the Real Housewives of St. Louis. Alvin, Reid, I want to ask you about the Citizens for Modern Transit, who hosted an event today where a new study for Metrolink was released. 16 stops going from Grand and Natural Bridge in the city down to Chippewa through downtown. Some of the route will go through the middle of the street, maybe opening by 2029, and yet we still really haven't figured out how to take care of the crime surrounding Metrolink. Most recently on South Grand, and just last night or the day before at the Loop station, 2 people found shot there. Don't you think we're expanding a little too much when we haven't got the current system under control?
No, I disagree with that. In that, one, look, you made the plan to expand it and it's going to run, and it's not going to open until 2029. I think, look, if you give up now on 2029, we really are dead. And like if the city technically just had floated down the river by 2029, what difference does it make about the Metro line anyway? And then as far as the violence is concerned, look, anybody getting shot anywhere is a concern and is very important and needs to be stopped. But I mean, people getting shot at the bus stop. I mean, people have been getting shot at the bus stop since there have been bus stops, okay? That's not a like, see, it's dangerous and blah, blah, blah. No, if St. Louis is dangerous, that's one thing. But don't put that on, Metro and the Metrolink if somebody gets shot at the bus stop. That's not fair.
I agree with that.
That's like somebody getting shot walking down the street and it's the business owner's fault, because they died in front of their store. That's not fair.
I agree with Alvin, but I certainly about Metrolink, and I'm for Metrolink expansion. I think it's something we should do. I do have a question, and none of us has obviously read this report. Why would it take 11 years to build? I mean, things shouldn't. It just seems like a large amount of time, and maybe they have all the reasons, but that seems like a long time.
Well,
to do
another
this.
problem with it, Ray, and I'm not in favor of it. I think that there's got to be a better way to move people for $700 million. I mean, and that's the estimate. And you know how these estimates are. I mean, if they say this is going to cost you $700 million, it'll be $1 billion. And whether or not to get from Grand and Natural Bridge to Jefferson and Chippewa, whether that's $1 billion, and half of it will be borne locally. I mean, I think they ought to rethink it.
Well, we've just returned. I want to self-identify as the Ellie Mae Clampett on the panel and admit that this was my first, and our daughter's first trip to New York City. So to get on a subway and honestly, it's the most unbelievable thing in the world. And I'm sorry, I know that makes me a yokel, but we need something like this here, but we can't attach it to perfect crime stats. I mean, that would be ideal, but we can't stop progress for that kind of thing.
Don't forget, guys, number one, our ridership is down 20%, largely because of crime. And it's not just the couple of shootings we mentioned. We had a shooting in downtown where the guy was killed, the homeless guy, and there have been many other incidents of crime on the platforms on our thing. And unlike New York City, which I agree, public transportation is great, but they have critical mass. Their highways and roads are so jammed, they make riding the
Your civic
subway
duty.
there the easier route.
Right.
And here, it's so much easier to have a car. I mean,
Okay,
because
but I mean,
there's no
but
traffic
that
on-
argument, that basically, you could extend that to a lot of things and say, like, God, I wish it was 1965 again. It's not.
What do you
Okay,
mean?
and
I
if
mean, what do
St.
you mean?
Louis is going to have
I'm telling
a
you,
future,
there's no one in the inner core, Alvin. That's the point I'm making. There aren't
He said
people
there's
in
nobody-
the inner core.
yeah.
Well, to ride this thing.
ultimately, there will be. All
Really?
right?
If
Okay,
you
then
build
there's
it-
not. Why are we? I mean, technically, if that's the attitude that we all take in St. Louis, then we should do nothing.
Well, we could-
should do
how about
nothing.
this?
let me
how
tell
about
you
this?
something.
As a-
Zero.
No, just quickly.
No, whatever
put it
project,
somewhere
whatever
else.
it is, like,
put
no.
it where the traffic is, which would be out
We
west.
did that. We did that once.
Wait,
And let me tell you,
I agree
we
with you,
spent-
Charlie, because that's the point I always make. Now, we were just talking about the north and south. I'm the
Right.
one who said, like, no, this thing should move east and west. I've always said that. So
All
I do
right,
agree
okay.
with you on that.
Charlie, one of the few issues our older viewers or longtime viewers will remember that our late friend Martin and I agreed upon was we wasted a billion with a B on a Page Avenue extension that did nothing more than solve some inconvenience for people. And so to Bill's point, I understand your point about the cost, and I agree with you that it'll probably be higher, particularly if it takes 11 years to do what doesn't seem to be that much. But Alvin's right. We can't give up in this town, and light rail is good for the environment, and it's good for transportation.
You know, Ray,
and bridging north-south makes sense.
Well, while Wendy was just in
New York.
I was in San Francisco, and I took the bus from the Washington Square neighborhood down to Haight-Ashbury, and the bus or the streetcar actually, and it was really nice. And I thought this is a nice way to move people. It's so much cheaper than light rail.
And I lived in Washington, D.C. for years. Our Washington,
Okay.
D.C. moment
This
was when
sounds
we
like-
moved there, and said, like,
Sure.
hey, this is, like, really
Nice.
cool.
This is beginning
All
to
right.
sound like a travel show.
Okay.
I was in
let's move
Millstadt
on.
recently,
Yes.
and there's a
All right.
wonderful little diner.
Hey, Bill McClellan, I want to ask you about another topic, and that would be the governor, Mike Parson, along with the mayor of Kansas City and our mayor, toured St. Louis last week, and they had lots of nice photos, didn't seem to agree on much. To me, it was just kind of like a photo op signifying nothing. What did you think about it?
I think you're too cynical, Charlie. Too cynical. I mean, we need help from the legislature, and if the mayor can meet with the mayor of Kansas City and agree that we got to work together, and the governor comes down and they can be friendly with him, that's all good. I mean, it might not solve anything, but it might help something. I mean, it can't hurt. I thought it was a fine thing.
I could not agree with you more. He has all of that electric, that lightning in a bottle, electricity, charisma. Mike Parson does.
He does.
Of a pen light, right? I mean, that's what this guy has. But you know what? I've got he's not on the ground shooting an assault rifle at a target. He looks like a man who is used to doing business face to face with people that he develops relationships with. I think it's refreshing. I think it's really refreshing. And for the mayor of Kansas City and for the mayor of St. Louis to come together and to talk about similarities between our larger cities in Jackson County and St. Louis County, and then the smaller cities. I have a very good feeling about
I don't
this.
know. I think, Charlie, I agree with you. Just a photo op. Governor Parson, in reality, could care less about St. Louis or could care less about Kansas City. And in that photo op, Sly James gave the little bunny ears behind Mayor Crusen's head because they're looking at St. Louis saying yeah, right. Good job, St. Louis. You're dragging the whole thing down. So I don't know if we're dragging it down.
I
think
Give him a chance. Give him a chance.
That was cynicism.
Yes, it was.
I hate to take this position, but I agree with you because I think that what Governor Parson actually does next year will
Be more important.
will be more important. But I don't think it's better that he came here, and that the one thing that it would be nice if would happen is if the metropolitan legislators in this state formed more of a serious coalition and stood up for us instead of having this assumption that and I have nothing against rural
remember when
Missouri.
Governor
they
Matt-
don't do, and I have nothing against rural Missouri.
Remember
but
when
we don't do that.
Remember when Governor Matt Blunt said that Democrats only live in places where people don't want to live.
Right.
You know, meaning St. Louis. Now you could have that attitude toward us, or you can be like
Exactly.
Governor Parson.
Or you
come
could have
here and
been- or
meet
you
us.
could have met him and said, "Hey, you know what you could do for us, Governor?" And I'm not being funny on this.
And he does.
Hey, help us legalize gambling in the state of Missouri immediately. Let's get in on this
I don't know
right.
about that,
Parson
Alvin.
does
I
have
will
an
say this.
easy
I'll give you
accent.
an example. I mean,
Yeah.
Today there was a meeting at Greg's Bar, which is on North Broadway, and it's in an area where there's been a lot of cruising and drag racing and a lot of shell casings on the ground. And at about 2 o'clock this afternoon, about 75 business leaders got together to complain. The mayor didn't make it. We were told by her chief of staff, Steve Conway, that she knows about it, and they informed the governor. And then the chief of police was there, John Hayden, as was the director of public safety, Judge Jimmy Edwards. But, you know, that to me is the kind of meeting that it would be nice to have a governor or a mayor show up at, as opposed to just a photo op. Meet with the people who are boots on the ground, who've got problems with real issues, and see if you can come up with a solution. And as the chief of staff said, Mr. Conway goes, "We have no grand plan. We're looking for your ideas." And I'm thinking, hey, it'd be kind of nice if the governor or the mayors could come up with some leadership on issues like this, because those are real issues threatening the city of St. Louis.
I met one of those gentlemen Saturday, one of the business owners.
Oh,
And
did you know?
He was very sincere in his concern. Said the meeting was going to be there. I'm not surprised that the mayor wasn't there.
Governor Greitens came in with some ideas,
He
like,
did.
you know, putting highway patrol troopers on the city streets and on the highways,
on the highway.
in and around St. Louis, and everybody laughed. So
Well, it wasn't
I
bad
think
idea.
you've got to get the lay of the land.
It
All
was
right,
a bad
hey, let's
idea.
move
He
on.
is okay.
Let's move on to another topic. And Bill McClellan, I'm going to ask you if you agree with me after the long winter when we kept learning that the governor was guilty of election violations. He had taken the donor list from the Mission Continues and used it to run for governor. And we had subpoenas and hearings, and Democrats and Republicans all felt that this campaign finance problem was a huge issue for the governor. Well, it turns out that State Senator Maria Chappelle-Nadell has just agreed to pay $15,000 as a penalty to the Federal Elections Commission because she ran for Congress against Lacey Clay in 2016, and she misappropriated $104,000. She took money from corporations and unions, which you can't do at the federal level, and she also took campaign contributions beyond what she could. So I don't think that the media really covered Senator Maria Chappelle-Nadell's woes with campaign finance with anywhere near the zeal they did the governor's. Do you think that she kind of got a pass?
No, I don't at all. I think it's apples and oranges, and it's this liberal media stuff, I'm afraid. You know, Eric Greitens was the sitting governor, and he got a lot more publicity over an affair he had than he did over the campaign finance violations. But he was the sitting governor, and the Republican legislature was talking about impeaching him. Of course that got a lot of news. Ms. Nadal was a failed candidate. You know, maybe had she won, it would have gotten more news, but she's a failed candidate. So I didn't think it was a big deal, but the Post-Dispatch, we certainly had it.
Yeah, I mean, you covered it, and
Yeah.
I understand to be clear, what ex-Governor Greitens was accused of with his misusing his charity list was far more serious.
Really?
Oh yeah, as a violation. And I'm not defending Maria. She clearly, paid the fine, and she should have. And a lot of people pay those kind of fines. What he was accused of was worse. But as Bill said, he's the sitting governor, and she just was running for. I mean, she's not even close to the same.
But she's not a marginal candidate. She's a longtime member of
What do
the
you
General
think?
Assembly
You think
and
it's
a
a
state
major
senator.
news that she paid a $15,000
Well, see, that's
fine?
my point. You guys diminish it when it's this Democrat, but it's a really big thing.
She's
when
not
it's
the
a
governor.
Republican.
It's got nothing to do with her
This
party.
is a ill-advised attack on the media, Charlie.
Right, exactly.
No, I don't think so.
Well, wait a minute.
The governor was being impeached by Republicans,
Right.
and he was the sitting governor. You don't see a difference between a failed candidate and a sitting governor?
If nothing else had happened, and I mean the whole down the basement thing and all that, and all that.
Oh, come
If
on,
none of
don't
that-
dismiss that.
Right, if none of that had happened, and the only thing was there was this list, or whatever his federal was, and he said, like, we messed up. That list got interchanged in some ways I didn't know about. What's the fine? I'll pay it tomorrow. That story would have been in the paper
He
that
did.
long.
Remember, it was the $100
But
fine
Charlie,
from the State
Charlie,
Ethics Commission.
Charlie.
That's it.
He paid it.
Charlie.
Right. So
The previous year.
So it got covered. He paid it. That was it. That's not what all the publicity about the governor was about.
Oh, no,
You
it was a
know
lot of
that.
it. You can do a Google
Charlie,
search and you will
Charlie.
find literally dozens, if not 100 stories on the governor and his election finances.
And Charlie, we
He's the
talked
governor.
about
He's
the
the
governor all the
governor.
time.
I really,
Everybody was
Exactly,
talking about
but
the
no one's
governor.
talking about Maurice Chappelle. No, that you're making my case.
Charlie,
No,
I give you an A for effort, but you're talking about a sitting governor who made himself out as Captain America, and everything was going to change, and he had the answers to everybody's problem. His beautiful wife and their two beautiful children.
Great impression.
And well, but seriously, and Maria Chappelle Nadal, excuse me, she is a known entity. Everybody knows that.
Yeah, trouble.
She's trying to she's unconventional.
That's up.
She's
So you gave her a
unconventional.
pass. I understand.
Charlie,
Okay, that's why
let's
you gave her
try
a pass.
this.
No.
Let's try this. If Marie, instead of it being Marie Chappelle Nadal, that had been a Republican conservative who ran for Congress and lost, do you think we in the media would be, oh, this is a huge story? Really?
point.
You think some,
Yeah, I do.
some
I do. I think
marginal
most of our viewers
candidate
do,
that had
too.
run against Ann
I do.
Wagner or
I
run
do.
against...
I think
you know,
it
are
would have
you
gotten more
kidding?
attention
Are
than
you
it did.
kidding?
I honestly do.
If somebody had run against
Yeah,
Ann Wagner,
yeah.
oh my
If
God,
Ann
it's a huge
Wagner
story.
did this, yeah.
So in other words, the media in St. Louis is biased against
I think
conservatives.
everybody. I think Bill's right. It was the Republicans, the Democrats, the media. They gave this woman, the state
So
senator, a
this,
pass.
I don't mean to put you on the stand, but
Yeah.
so you think there is a media bias in St. Louis against conservatives?
I don't think there's any doubt about it.
Okay, well,
Yeah,
we can
I
just
don't think
move
there's
on.
any doubt about
All right, okay.
And I would not argue with that, Charlie.
And I wouldn't either.
making
But in this case-
yeah, a failed candidate against a sitting governor
Yeah.
are the same thing. No.
Okay.
Yeah.
Hey, let's go to our next topic. Alvin Reid, I want to ask you about a plan in both Glen Carbon and Edwardsville to charge consumers at retail operations 10 cents for a plastic or a paper bag. In other words, they're encouraging people to bring their cloth. Now, here's how I look at it. Someone shows up with a cloth bag at the grocery store after driving there in an SUV that gets 8 miles per gallon. Does that make sense?
Yeah, because we all have to, we choose the ways that we're going to either protect the environment or be socially conscious. You're not, like say, some people, will help the homeless, but at the same time will turn their back on somebody else. It isn't like you should have to pick and choose. The bag thing is that those things, the brown paper bags are biodegradable, that's one thing. But those plastic bags live forever. They get in the ecosystem, and it's bad. And many American cities and municipalities have said we're not having it anymore. I'm glad somewhere, some town around here decided, hey, let's be on the cutting edge of this instead of the last one to do it. And that's the way things should be. So we should applaud that.
I agree. I think it's a good policy. And some time ago, a panelist on this show was talking about how we didn't need to worry about Metrolink because we really should build around the cars. Oh, that was you. That was like 5 minutes ago.
That's not exactly what
So
I
your
said.
SUV theory, no, but no, I think that,
let me put it this way, Ray.
Ray
Ray lives within walking distance of 2 Metrolink stops, and you have never taken Metrolink
Are you kidding?
to Grand or to here. You've never taken it to Donnybrook.
It's really a long way to get to
Oh,
this
yeah.
here.
It's the
You know,
kids at SLU
I got-
can
look
walk
at-
down
I got
there.
my- look, I got my
kids at
5-mile
SLU.
hike
He's never taken it to Donnybrook.
I'm too
I hate
old to
to
walk that
out
far.
ya.
Let's take him out in the parking lot and stone him
Yeah,
because
no.
he's never
You guys
walked
talk
18
really
blocks
To be clear.
from. No, the PBS.org had a really comprehensive look on the NewsHour page, and this was just a year ago, on plastics and what it's doing to the environment. And I'm pretty sure they said that by 2050, a lot of these landfills, it's over. I mean, we have no more
Right.
space.
Oh,
in
and by the
landfills.
way, guess what?
And I'm a heartless conservative, and I think that we should be
And guess
doing
what
away with
municipality
plastic.
saved its recycling services?
Oh, yeah, Kirkwood.
Didn't it tell you? I said people are going to lose their minds.
And you and
Yeah.
It took a week.
Yeah.
Kirkwood,
Yeah,
the
right.
recycling program in Kirkwood, which we talked about,
Right.
curbside will live another day.
There you go.
All right.
At least a year anyway.
Maybe they were watching Donnybrook. Okay, Ray, I want to ask you about Mark McGuire. It was 20 years ago this month that he belted 62.
Right.
He beat Roger Maris's record. Big moment in St. Louis. And this Sunday, it's Mark McGuire bobblehead night when the Cardinals take on the Dodgers at Busch Stadium. Personally, I kind of wish the Cardinals would walk away from Mark McGuire quietly. What do you think?
I think if they have little arms on the dial and you stick a needle in it and the muscles
That's
get big,
awful. That's
that would
awful.
be a good way to do it. And I'm sorry, but to me, I know he's got a lot of fans out there, and I think he's a really good guy, but he is emblematic of an era, and I don't care how inconsistent things are. The fact is, we were kind of conned, and I don't think we should honor that.
Would the Black Sox have put, would they have had a shoeless Joe Jackson bobblehead? I mean, this was a big scandal.
Right, and all the stuff about the Cardinal way and everything, and honor Mark McGwire, and I don't know he's a good guy. I mean, I don't know him at all.
I've heard he is. I think he is.
I think it's terrible.
Yeah.
Makes a terrible look.
All right. Well, that's not where you put a steroid shot. Okay.
Oh, okay.
And
That's what Jose Canseco said. It did not go in the arm.
I'm sorry. It was
right. And then B, the Cardinals put him in their Hall of Fame 2 years ago before people like Vince Coleman and Ray Langford. So you see where the Cardinals stand on it. So I'm not surprised they're having bobbleheads now.
Alvin, you seem to know a lot about the application of steroids.
I've been around professional athletics my entire life.
I apologize for that. I didn't mean to.
Alvin used to be very smart.
I used to be about 6'2", right?
Funny thing is, it may not be that funny, but the Oakland Athletics have already had a Mark McGwire bobblehead night.
Well,
so they're honoring him too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm not surprised at all. And if this manager hadn't worked out for the Cardinals, his name would have came up.
And we still do have there he is, the Martin Dugan bobblehead, still strong after all these years. All right. Hey, let's go to the mailbag and see what you had to say about last week's program. If the powers that be haul down the statue of Columbus in Tower Grove Park, I suggest they replace it and all the other incorrect memorials with bronze and marble statues of half-naked women like the ones so popular in our parks, museums, and cemeteries. That from Patrick Blakemore of Glen Park, Missouri. And we heard from Jim Zemenick of Webster, who wrote, regarding the op-ed in the New York Times, your panel expended way too much time on who was the author, little time on what was written, and most importantly, no time on what our legislative branch should do in response. Thank you, Jim. You can write us care of KETC, 3655 Olive Street, St. Louis, Missouri, 63108. Don't forget those emails, letters at ketc.org, and in a moment, Wendy and Bill will read your tweets at #DonnyBrookSTL. Everybody else, we'll see you next week at this time. Thanks so much for joining us, but don't go away.
Donnybrook is made possible by the members of the 9 Network.